Determining resource provisioning policies for applications in cloud computing environments is a significant challenge. IRMOS Platform as a Service architecture addresses this issue in the context of real-time, online interactive multimedia applications. In this presentation, we will show the IRMOS application performance modeling process and the generation of the resource provisioning policies. The component which is providing this service in IRMOS is the Performance Estimation Service, abbreviated PES. This diagram shows where the PES resides within the IRMOS architecture. Starting with an application customer negotiating an ASLA via the IRMOS portal, this ASLA contains specification of the workload and QoS terms. During negotiation, the SLA management system queries the PES for the optimal resources required to meet the customer terms. The PES estimates the required resources and price. It uses the performance models and the database of prior calculation within this process. The returned estimates are then inserted into a TSLA to be negotiated with the IZONI provider. Upon successful negotiation of the TSLA and ASLA, the customer can then use the application deployed in IZONI. The application is monitored. The monitoring data goes to the performance feedback service where an evaluation of the prediction occurs. Back to our performance modeling service, the goal of performance modeling is to choose the appropriate resources we need to run the application with the specified QoS constraints. There are many techniques that can be used for the modeling and estimation, such as artificial neural networks, discrete event simulation, finite state machine, Bayesian belief network, or any combinations of these. Different models are appropriate for different application types. The resource estimation for the e-learning scenarios in IRMOS exploit queuing networks, artificial neural networks, and discrete event simulation. Let us have a look at the e-learning scenario and try to understand the whole process being modeled. Here, the request goes from the mobile phone to a base station, through several networks to IZONI, into IZONI, and then to the host where the application is deployed. The host underlying resources constitute multiple cores and a processor sharing queue. These resources are shared according to the scheduling policy and thus made available for the e-learning application for certain slots of time. Meanwhile, IZONI keeps all the requests in a hypervisor queue for the application to treat once it gains control of the processor. The request eventually gets into Tomcat, where the application monitoring occurs. This monitoring data is used during the benchmarking phase for training an artificial neural network, or ANN, that captures the innermost response time. In order to satisfy the user QoS term, which is expressed in terms of query response time, performance modeling has to take into consideration all the intermediate networks, i.e. mobile phone, base station to IZONI, and all the queues and thread pools. The queuing network model then combines the components models and produces an end-to-end delay estimation. This slide describes the processes executed when the PES is called to estimate resources. The inputs are the user constraints, for example target response time and reliability, the workload, which may be uncertain, for example 60 to 100 users, a description of the IZONI resources, and price list. The process starts with the optimizer selecting a candidate resource specification, for example 3 GHz CPU, 512 MB memory, plus other networking resources. It passes these specifications to the sampler, which then returns the information from the neural network about the inner Tomcat execution time. The discrete event simulator is then called to compute the total response time. The analysis module calculates the probability of achieving a target response time. If this is not the case, the process is repeated with the new hardware until optimal resources are found. These are then returned along with the estimated price. As we have just seen, the model takes as input the workload from the user, candidate resource specification from the optimizer, estimation of the inner response time from the sampler. It is a discrete event simulator written in MATLAB. It outputs a total response time probability distribution, which is analyzed to see if the resource specification is likely to meet the QoS requirements. We show in the next video an experiment with the performance model simulator. Here it is executed manually in MATLAB. However, this is run dynamically by the optimizer when the PES is queried for response estimation. An event generator produces requests which are treated in the model. For each request, the response time is calculated and the set of response times is updated. This set of response times will allow us to calculate the probability of the occurrence of a certain response time. We see here the set of response times on the x-axis and their probabilities on the y-axis being updated on the fly every time a response time is calculated. The more requests we simulate, the more accurate our estimates. After a certain number of runs, we will be able to deduce with a certain precision the probability of achieving a target response time. In this example, the probability of achieving a response time less than 1 second is estimated to be 0.97. If the optimizer accepts this probability, the associated hardware resources are then chosen and returned to the ASLA management system. These estimations are based on the combination of processing time distribution provided by the neural network, hypervisor Q model, and the mobile network delay distribution.